I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Swerczek, and I'm proud to announce on today's episode, special guest on the show, much fanfare, cue the applause, not in the corner, but on Quinlan's corner, senior ballistician Jayden Quinlan. Jayden, thanks for carving out time to come on the show.
You're welcome. I've gotten yelled at enough that I came crawling back, I guess.
So recently you just returned from a work trip, probably went to some cool places, had to do some cool stuff. I'm guessing people at the airport were stopping you to say, we need another Quinlan's Corner episode. At a minimum, people at your destination had to be wondering why the heck you haven't been on the podcast in so long.
No, when I travel, I try to go in disguise, and so I trimmed my beard down, as you could probably see.
And you wear the glasses with the nose and the mustache on there?
That's right, yeah.
Yep, I've seen...
Layers of deception are important.
Well, yeah, and redundancy, because you want the mustache on top of the mustache with the glasses.
Yep. 2 is 1, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Well, suffice it to say, our listener, the people that write in, the people that we talk to, we were just talking here earlier, we've had a big run of matches. We had the Zombies in the Heartland 3-in match, the Hornady NRL Hunter match, and then the Hornady PRS match. Both of those are in Utah. Mm-hmm. And we've talked to a ton of people. And that's one thing that we really enjoy is getting the interaction with people while we're out there in the wild. And when they talk about the show, it's really rewarding for us because, as you know, you have way more hours per week of work to do than you can actually get done in a week. And that's the same for pretty much everybody in the building. And so the podcast being an extracurricular activity is something we try to squeeze in. And when it feels like, oh my gosh, it's so much extra labor to do it, but you see the impact it has for the actual user of the product, it feels like you're doing something worthwhile. And nothing gets our listeners more excited than episodes of Quinlan's Corner because you dive in and you do so eloquently. You speak in such a way that you can take these complex topics and make them digestible. And so this is a show we've been wanting to record for a while because it's a often misunderstood, more often romanticized idea about long-range shooting. And there's just a lot of myths about it, a lot of dogma as usual. And there's a lot of, again, I think the right word is just romanticism. You know, you think back to Bob Lee Swagger talking to the colonel. He's like, you know what it takes to pull off a shot like that? 6 to 10 second time of flight. Even the curvature of the earth comes into play, whatever. So what we're talking about is what we internally kind of refer to as earth-based effects, but there's more to it than that. It's what a lot of people refer to simply as Coriolis, the Coriolis effect, but there's actually more to it than that as well. Yeah.
It could be argued either way, I guess. I mean, there's some verbiage out there that encompasses what we'll talk about in the second thing we'll consider here. They can kind of lump that into Coriolis, but we should probably preface this with it might be our most controversial podcast to date. I think we've had a few.
We've had a few. Your groups are too small. It's pretty controversial.
Yeah, there were some angry people over that. But this one is going to tap into the communities that are at battle between the shape of the Earth.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Is it an ellipsoid, a sphere, or is it flat?
The Earth, as I know it, is in an ellipsoidal shape.
Yeah, me too. But, there starts the controversy. Luckily, though, and we can maybe talk about this in the end, that Fordoff is very inclusive. And it has it accounts for the Earth-based effects that we will talk about. And you can also run a flat Earth mode by turning those off.
Oh,
so
boy.
Everybody should be happy, although some of the topics we'll discuss might be controversial.
There's going to be some conspiracy theorists in the comments right now. And stick around to the end if you want to learn how to put Fordoff in the flat Earth mode. So on a broad level, Jayden, when we flippantly refer to things as Coriolis, we really need to define what that is. What when you hear that at the firing line, when you're at the range or at a PRS match, you hear somebody mention it, what are they talking about?
Yeah, so Coriolis is due to the rotation of the Earth. So the Earth is rotating to the east at all times. We generally see that as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, right? That you can kind of view it every day from that perspective. But when the when the Earth is rotating to the east, anytime we begin to shoot in a northerly or southerly direction, we are starting to change the essentially rotational velocity of, or we're going to experience a change in rotational velocity between our position as the shooter and where the target is located. So because the Earth is, let's say, an ellipsoid, I think that's the most agreed upon shape,
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not the same circumference at every part of the sphere.
Yeah. So if we are in the northern hemisphere, which I think most of our listeners probably are, we'll talk about southern hemisphere as well.
We can check that out, and as it turns out, they are almost exclusively.
Great. They can't pick me apart on that one.
Right.
So let's just say middle of America. Nebraska happens to be right there. So we'll use where we're sitting as an example. If we fire a shot to the north of here, the circumference of the Earth that we are at our latitude is going to equate to a certain rotational velocity, right? Because the Earth essentially spins around 1 time per day, right? So you can back all those time and distance units into much finer detail. But when we shoot a target that's to the north, the further north we go, the smaller the circumference of the Earth becomes until you get to the North Pole where it's 0, right? Or essentially flat near there. So what that means is shooting a target north of us is that the target is going to be moving at a slower velocity than we are moving. So when that bullet comes out of the end of the barrel, you could think of it as, okay, we're northern hemisphere, we're sitting in Nebraska, we're facing north, we're looking up towards North Dakota. That means the Earth is rotating to our right, if we envision that scenario, right? So we are moving to the right because the Earth rotates to the east. We are moving to the right at a faster rate than our target is because we are at a larger circumference of the Earth. When that bullet is launched, that angular velocity is going to continue. That rotational velocity that the Earth has, we have, our bullet has, our gun has, because we're attached to that frame, right? We're attached to the Earth.
Yep.
And essentially the atmosphere around the bullet is as well, right? Otherwise we would be experiencing extremely high winds all the time, right? If the Earth was rotating and the atmosphere was static around it, you probably wouldn't be able to stand up outside. It would be so windy all the time. So that's not the case, right? The atmosphere is rotating with it. And so as that bullet comes out on its way to the north, it is now moving to the right at the same velocity that we were moving to the right at where it was launched from. Now, the target that's farther to the north is going to the right, from our perspective, at a slower rate. So what that means is that the bullet is going to hit to the right of the target because it's moving to the right at a faster rate. So that's the technical part of Coriolis.
Okay.
It's due to the Earth's rotation and the fact that we are shooting at a target that's at a different circumference of the Earth than we are. In the northern hemisphere, whether you shoot to the north or you shoot to the south, you're always going to hit to the right. So if we flip that example around, okay, so now we're standing in Nebraska and we're shooting towards Kansas. Well, we are on a smaller circumference latitude of the Earth than our target is. So that means we're moving to the left, right? East would be left if you're looking south. So we're moving to the left at a slower rate than our target is. So the target is outrunning our bullet to the left, bullet's going to hit to the right. So it's easy to keep in mind that northern hemisphere, you're always going to hit to the right. And the southern hemisphere is the opposite of that. You're always going to hit to the left. Now, this is where a little bit of that romanticism comes into play. Because how much? That's what matters, right? We need to be able to correct for any sort of effects that our bullet is experiencing between us and the target to be able to hit that target. So how much is it? And honestly, it's a tiny amount.
Yeah.
It's imperceptibly small. I'm not sure that you could measure it with a shoulder-fired rifle with any level of confidence, even using very high levels of instrumentation to rule out the other aspects that go into that bullet, landing where it does at the target.
Right.
So it goes back to kind of our hit probability podcast we've talked about, where we talk about those different sources of how the bullet gets to where it ends up. But even with all those things, if you could measure each one of those things and account for them, with a shoulder-fired rifle in the common use cases that we have, you still really can't even see it. We're talking, I'm going to pull numbers off my head here. I didn't, run these numbers before I came, but I'm going to say you're talking tenths of an inch at a mile.
Wow.
With most of the cartridges that, let's say a Creedmoor or PRCs or stuff that you're going to shoot at.
Yeah, typical small cal. Yeah, 300 PRC, 7 PRC, 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah, so that, tenths of an inch at a mile of missing to the right by shooting in the northern hemisphere is eclipsed by like orders of magnitude by every other thing that you can and can't control as a shooter.
Yeah, but what if you do your part?
If you do your part, you may be able to increase your hit probability by such small percentages that you can't.
Yeah, it's quarter-inch MOA all day long.
That's right.
That's right.
All bullets go in the same hole. Mm-hmm. So,
match-proven bullet profiles that shooters love, now perfected by Hornady. Aero Match Bullets, featuring the most popular match bullet profiles and weights from across the industry. Affordable match-winning performance, unrivaled availability, unmatched bullet consistency. Aero Match Bullets from Hornady. Shoot the best.
So why do we even care about Coriolis at all, right? Well, there's a really cool example, the Paris gun in World War I. This is kind of a famous example of a necessary calculation of Coriolis. So the Paris gun was this huge artillery piece that the Germans had built in World War I to, I believe it was to conduct a siege on the city of Paris. And so from where the gun was launched, I forget the exact, or where the projectiles were launched, I forget the exact location, but it's like 75 miles away from Paris. This is a really long shot. We think about artillery in the modern era, and you're talking, maybe 5, 10, 20 kilometers.
Right. This is
way farther, right? And they actually had a valid Coriolis correction that they had to do. So when the Paris gun was fired, I have a couple little notes here. So they were firing at a 232 degree azimuth of fire. That's what was reported from what I can find. So that's like maybe 44% south and 56% west to kind of give you an idea, right?
Yeah, because 0 or 360 would be due north, 270 would be west.
Yeah. So so 0 or 180 would be south, right?
Yeah.
So they're shooting like southwest. So we know based on what we just said that as they fired those, they're farther to the north, and so their rotational velocity at the circumference at the latitude that they're at is going to be slower than their target is. So their target is going to be moving to the left at a faster rate. So they're going to need to essentially aim left. Can you guess how much left they had to aim by?
0.3 of a mil.
We're not talking mils here. We're talking miles.
Yeah. Did they hold left edge?
Well, no. I'm going to, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know how big Paris is as a target, but left edge could have been. Yeah.
Really? So we're talking miles.
Yeah. 3/4 of a mile left.
Jeez. Just because.
To compensate for the fact that they were moving eastward at a different rate than Paris was.
Wow.
Pretty wild.
That is incredible.
But you think about that, okay, that's an extreme example, right? None of us are even scratching the surface of that sort of a territory of a shot. So when we're talking shoulder-fired rifle stuff, like in the Fordhoff program, the Coriolis correction is in there. And you can see it. You can go play with it, and you can expose it yourself and see what it's worth. But it is so small, it's not worth losing sleep over, for sure.
Right. Yeah, so and we're talking the north and south shooting of what is truly Coriolis. And as a quick little story, I was at the Hornady PRC running this PRS match, and listener of the show and worked kind of in the space, also a law enforcement officer. I think you talked to him, Clay Creel.
Oh, yeah.
He was in our squad. And he identified why I missed every shot that I did miss, and he as well. We just forgot to hold for Coriolis.
This is true.
Yep.
You missed by tenths of inches.
Yeah, at 450 yards.
At a mile. Yeah. But, we've had questions on that over the years. I remember you and I, fielding some questions back when we were working together about, well, how much does it matter and stuff like that. So of the things you have to worry about, I would say Coriolis with a shoulder-fired rifle, as far as your left-to-right deflection experienced by shooting north or south to any level, is minuscule.
Now, there is some difference when you're shooting east and west, but that is not truly Coriolis effect.
Yeah, so that's best described as a thing, and I may mispronounce this because I'm not Hungarian. I'm Irish.
You're hungry, probably. It's getting to be that time.
I may be hungry, yes, but not Hungarian. You might have a better chance.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
From Poland, I mean, that's closer proximity. But the Eotvos or Eotvos, or again, don't know exactly how you say it. But this one is pretty cool. So the Eotvos or Eotvos effect, this was discovered in the early 1900s. Again, this Hungarian guy, Baron Roland von Eötvös. So pretty cool name.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Baron Roland.
So they were weighing cargo or weighing something. I don't know if it was specifically cargo, but they're weighing something on ships that are traveling east and west. And they found that depending on the direction of travel, east or west, that cargo or whatever it was weighed different amounts.
So they had a fixed value of this didn't change.
Yeah, when the ship is static, it's not in motion, it would weigh a given amount, right? X amount. And then when it would travel to the east, it would be lighter. And when it would travel to the west, it would be heavier. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
I tried to explain that in 1900.
Yeah. There's a lot of super smart dudes in the early 1900s.
Yeah, I would have blamed it on, like, I didn't have, cat's milk beside the bed and a drawer full of hair to ward off evil spirits. That's what I would have said if I would have discovered this and tried to come up with an answer.
Yeah. Well, so as you started the podcast, I just got back from a trip yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so we had finally scheduled this. Like you said, we've been wanting to do this podcast for a long time, and I just haven't been able to carve out a window to do it. But we finally, earlier this week, said, no, we're last week, I think. Preston put his foot down. He did. He got mad at me.
Size 17. Yeah, bam.
I'm very sensitive, so I had to give in. But anyway.
15, rather. Size 15. Sorry, Preston.
Yeah, so we decided let's just schedule this thing. It's been a while or whatever. Well, I knew this trip was coming up, and I was traveling from Nebraska to the East Coast. And the location that I was traveling to was essentially directly east of Nebraska. Mm-hmm. So on our way out, pretty much a 90-degree azimuth, of travel out there, and then on the way home, 270, right? So this is kind of a cool chance to see if I could measure what Baron Roland von Eötvös did back then, but in a lot faster speed, right, with an aircraft. So what I did is I took a scale and a bullet with me, and I weighed that bullet on my scale at home a bunch of times, established an average, right? It's pretty consistent. And then once we essentially got up to altitude and got up to speed, things kind of stabilize in the cabin. I would turn that scale on and weigh that bullet. And this isn't perfect because there was still some air movement and stuff going on, a little bit of vibration in the plane and stuff, right? So the scale's bouncing around in its values a little bit, like it's not perfectly zeroed. Yeah. So the way I dealt with that for this fun example is to just take tons of measurements and then average all of them at the end. So when I weighed that bullet here, it was 200 grains. Once we got up to altitude, we're traveling. I think we were running at around 570 miles an hour to the east. That bullet was weighing 198 grains is what the average came out to.
Wow.
So then we land on the East Coast, do what we're doing there. And on the way back, I did the exact same thing. What do you think it weighed on the way back when I was traveling to the west?
You think it would be 200?
Nope. About 202 is what it averaged.
Oh, wow.
So again, it's not a perfect test, right? Because my scale wasn't perfectly zeroed and all that kind of stuff. But it still kind of showed it. You could see it. So what is the Eotvos effect? Well, it's the same thing we described there, where essentially the weight of an object changes based on the direction east or west that you're traveling. Well, weight is mass times gravity.
Okay.
So the mass of an object is not going to change. That's based on its material and its physical shape or whatever. But the weight of it, if gravity changes, then by definition, the weight of that object will change.
Right in the formula.
What I was measuring with the scale.
Simple formula.
So this gets into a little bit of controversy with like centrifugal force and centrifugal acceleration, which is known as like a fictitious force for all these other different things. We're going to leave all that argument out of it and just try to understand this in a very simple manner. Mm-hmm. So the easiest example we could look at before we proceed is, do you ever play the corners game when you're a kid, sitting in the back seat of the car?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you hit the corner and you smash the guy up against the door on the outside of the corner?
Yep.
So when that's a good display of Newton's first law of motion, sometimes called like the law of inertia. So when you're traveling straight down that road, an object wants to travel in a straight line unless acted on by an outside force, right? So as the car and you are traveling straight down the road, and then the car begins to turn, your body wants to continue straight. So you're not being like thrown out against the inside of that door or pushed in that direction. It's that your body wanted to continue straight and the car decided to turn. And your perception of that is being pushed out against the door of the car, right?
How about it?
This is kind of the same thing that's happening with this Eotvos principle. So as we're firing to the east with the bullet, our bullet's velocity is aligned with the rotational velocity of the Earth. They're both in the same direction. And what that does is it increases what's called the tangential velocity that the bullet has relative to the Earth. So back to that scale example, I said when I was flying in the aircraft, it was weighing lighter, right? It was weighing 198 grains as we were traveling to the east. You could think of that as that bullet wants to continue in a straight line, right? The Earth is rotating beneath it and those two velocity vectors. So essentially, the bullet is being lifted slightly off the scale. Is the way you could maybe think about that in a very simple term.
Yeah, not actually what's happening, but a way to visualize it.
Yeah, you're essentially you have a force that inertial response to continue on that straight line and not follow that curved car, right? Mm-hmm. Is essentially a opposing force to gravity. So you're lowering the effective or apparent force of gravity. So if you do that by by definition of the formula of weight, mass times gravity, if we take that gravity number and lower it a little bit, mm-hmm. mass is the same, you can't change that.
Yep.
That by definition will change the weight, right? And it'll cause it to be lower. And so what this means is that when you shoot a bullet to the east, generally you're going to hit higher than you would if you shot just straight north or straight south. And that's because of that change in the tangential velocity. The opposite happens when you shoot to the west.
Okay.
So now essentially the tangential velocity or the velocity of the bullet is opposing the rotational velocity of the Earth, and that causes the tangential velocity to reduce, which by the same math we just went through, mm-hmm. now we're essentially increasing the effect of gravity. Mass is the same, weight goes up.
Oh, that's why it weighed 202 grains on your way home.
That's right. So, and you can then see, well, if I'm shooting a heavier bullet, I'm going to have more drop due to the amount of gravity that is present, or a lighter bullet. You can kind of see how that causes you to hit higher or lower.
Yeah.
So this one, and this is why, like in Fort Off, we call it Earth-based effects, because we parse it out into those two different things. The Eotvos, or your east and west directions, are worth worrying about.
Sure.
When I talked about Coriolis, I said like a tenth of an inch at a mile with like a Creedmoor. Right?
Mm-hmm. Unless you do your part.
Unless you do your part, yes. But when firing east or west with the Eotvos effect, you're talking the difference of a matter of inches at 1,000, maybe 4, 5, 6 inches. Again, I didn't run the calculations to bring the numbers.
But 4, 5, or 6 inches on if you shoot 30 shots and you're changing your mean point of impact by 4 or 5 or 6 inches, that's noticeable.
Absolutely.
Today's episode is brought to you by Hornady Security Rapid Safes. Using patented RFID technology, you get the quickest, most dependable access to your firearm when you need it the most. Check out the full Rapid Safe line at HornadySecurity.com. If you're trying to shoot a 1.5-minute plate, 2-minute plate, that could shift you on or off for sure.
And so when I say, let's just pick 5 inches. When I say 5 inches, what I mean is you shoot to the north and you're hitting dead on, right, at 1,000 yards. And then you turn and you shoot to the east. You're going to be hitting high now by about 5 inches. And then you turn the opposite, you're shooting to the west. You're going to be hitting low now by about 5 inches. So the spread between the two is about 10. The total net effect can be quite a bit at a mile, and it grows with distance, right?
Of course.
So at a mile, you might be looking at something on the order of 10 inches or so, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. So that's definitely worth accounting for, because again, back to like the hit probability podcast and understanding dispersion and a lot of the topics that we've covered, you're shooting a cone of fire. You're shooting a very precise shotgun at distance.
Mm-hmm.
And any mismatch between the center of that cone of fire and the center of the target is going to result in a loss in hit probability. You're going to have shots missing high or missing low.
Yeah.
So Eotvos is definitely worth accounting for.
And so there's really no calculator out there that separates these two. They just kind of lump it into what is, well, there's no BC calculators that could probably handle this, because I'm guessing there's equations of motion involved with the actual flight of the projectile that they can't solve. But it's usually just lumped into Coriolis. But in Hornady Fordhoff, we call it earth-based effects.
Right.
So we take Coriolis and the Eotvos effect and put them together as a singular solution.
Yeah, they're both calculated, because the other thing that happens is we almost never shoot directly east, directly west,
Right.
directly north, directly south.
Mm-hmm. So there's
so any
little bit.
variance in those two, like back to that Paris gun example where they shot at a 232-degree azimuth of fire, and I said they had to hold left by 3/4 of a mile. They also had to hold high by 1/4 mile to hit Paris, right? Because they are shooting to the west.
Yep.
Right? They were 56% west or whatever it would be. So it's doing both of those things. So it's accounting for all of that.
Yeah.
Now, to your point about other ballistics calculators out there, I know a lot of them have some sort of correction in there for whatever they call it, whether it's Coriolis or I don't know what other names there might be out there. I don't know, right? I haven't seen under the hood of each of those to see how they're parsing that out. And that's a difficult one to try to back into by just running a ballistics calculator. Like there's some things you can do. You can take a given ballistics calculator and run certain inputs through it to expose the way it's doing certain things.
Okay.
And kind of observe that. But that's a harder one to get to the bottom of.
Well, needless to say, Hornady Fordhoff does a wonderful job of accounting for this.
Mm-hmm.
And to really so that was super educational. And I feel like that was spoken at a level that most of our advanced hobbyists could understand. The rubber meets the road in how do you account for it, and when do you account for it?
Right.
Because that's a big one, like, okay, this is information, great. So I'm shooting a match. When do I need to be concerned?
Mm-hmm.
And once I establish that I am concerned, what do I do about it?
Right. So the question, I would say, is answered mainly by an understanding of your own processes and capabilities. Should you account for it? Yes, especially in the easterly or westerly directions, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, if you are accounting for it and then you forget to account for it, you have the chance of having more of a wrong answer than if you have it in flat earth mode and you just have earth-based effects turned off. You essentially have the balance point between the two.
Okay.
Right. So you're going to have error when shooting east, and you're going to have some error when shooting west. But if you don't, it removes the necessity to constantly update your azimuth of fire based on each new shot you take at a different firing azimuth.
Sure.
So if you want to be more precise, which you should, you would have it turned on, you would have the correct latitude plugged in, and you would update your magnetic azimuth for every single difference that you experienced in the target you were shooting.
Yep.
But again, that's a management issue, right?
Yeah.
Especially like at a match where, okay, you're the first shooter on the next stage, and you walk over there and you get all your gear down and your mags aren't loaded, and you don't have anything ready, right?
You're managing a lot of stuff.
You are. And so that might be a circumstance where maybe that match is only out to 800. The farthest targets are out to 800. That might be one where, hey, I'm going to leave it off because I don't want the chance of me messing up and it giving me the wrong answer because of my lack of maintenance of the inputs, right? But yeah, the farther out you go and the more directly east or directly west you're shooting, the more important it is to account for it.
Sure.
And if you're shooting only in one direction, you can kind of mask it a little bit. This also gets important when doing adjustments to drag, like the axial form factor adjustment.
Yep.
So if you're doing axial form factor adjustments, let's say you're shooting directly east. We have a range that we've shot on for many, many years that's exactly that way.
Yep.
Right? If I'm shooting directly east and let's say I did my zero angle, or I did, whatever I was doing for my zero, everything's good. I've built a strong foundation, and now I'm working my way out. I'm just shooting targets out at distance, and I'm out at 900 or 1,000, and I'm off by, let's say, 0.3 of a mil. Okay. Well, at that distance, the Eotvos effect causing us to hit high by shooting east, or let's just say I'm hitting high by 3/10 just to make this a little bit easier. Hitting high by 3/10, Eotvos may be contributing to, let's say, 1/10 of that. So 2/10 of it may be attributed to the drag that my specific barrel and suppressor and all bullet and all that stuff is producing. That is worth 2% or 2/10 of that 3/10 that I'm hitting high. But if I don't have my earth-based effects turned on and set correctly, I'm going to assume that full 3/10 is a drag adjustment.
So you're
I'm building,
overcompensating.
Yeah, and you can start to experience issues.
Yeah,
with
you're
that.
building in error into the calculator. You're lying to the calculator. It only knows what you give it as the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're setting yourself up for errant shots at longer range.
That's right.
So important to take that into account. And when you're using Hornady Ford-Off, it's as simple as when you're in the HUD, it says earth-based effects, just tap it.
Right.
And it'll turn on.
Right.
And it will automatically pull in your latitude from your device. And then all you have to do before you get your solution is capture your firing azimuth.
Right. Yep.
Which is pretty simple.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's uber simple. You just have to remember to do it.
That's right. And once you get used to it, it's very simple.
Yep.
The Kestrel, the Ford-Off is in the Kestrel. Earth-based effects is always on in the Kestrel.
Okay.
And this is actually an area where we've had some folks call up and say, hey, man, I have the exact same stuff in my Kestrel and the exact same thing in my app, and I'm getting a different number.
Yeah.
The only way you can do that is if you have a different number input or you have the settings set differently.
Mm-hmm.
And you're allowed to turn it off in the app. In the Kestrel, we left it on because the Kestrel, works off magnetic azimuths, right,
Yeah.
to capture the wind and do all that kind of stuff, those features that are available in the Kestrel. And so it's always on in that circumstance.
And it's just a little bit more clunky to turn things on and off in a Kestrel with the kind of the analog buttons, whereas on a cell phone in an app, it's super simple.
Yeah. And when we first launched the app, we gave no notification to the user that they had earth-based effects turned on or not, or that their firing azimuth was something other than 0 or not. Later, we updated that. So now when you go in there, if you have earth-based effects turned on, I believe the button color is a gray color when it's turned off.
Yep.
But when you turn it on, it turns red.
Right.
So it's very apparent. And same thing with your firing azimuth. If you have a non-zero value input in there, it's going to be red. And hopefully that helps guys to, I gotta update that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, it draws attention to it, and it's all about getting into the habit of things. And I think since the app was really in its infancy, I just made a habit of how I come up to a stage, let's say at a PRS match, I come up to a stage, I have earth-based effects on, I capture my firing azimuth, and then I write my dope card out. Mm-hmm. That's just how I've always done it, and so it's second nature to me. But for the people listening, the Ford-Off will default to flat Earth mode.
That's right.
Yep. So we want to decide with the conspiracy theorists on that one that it defaults to flat Earth mode, and then you have to knowingly go in there and turn on ellipsoid Earth mode or whatever it is. But it is something you have to go in and turn on. And again, uber simple. Right above the wind wheel, hit the earth-based effects. Mm-hmm. You'll turn it on. You'll get your latitude. You can just toggle it to get your latitude from your device, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yep. And I would say, out to maybe 800-ish, generally speaking, most calibers considered, right? Bullet choices and stuff like that considered. Out to 800, even the effects of Eotvos are going to be small enough that you're probably not going to see a significant change in hit probability by small shifts that are not accounted for by that. But certainly as you start to get out farther and farther and farther, that grows in magnitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
well,
it's worth paying attention to.
It is. It's worth romanticizing about.
I'm
going to take this long range shot and I'm going to account for the curvature of the Earth.
Yeah. But now that we've explained it, the only valid excuses that you can blame on this is if you shoot matches east or west. Because shooting north or south, Coriolis just, I mean, unless you got yourself a Paris gun and you're shooting a match in North Dakota, Nebraska, or it's covering states or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's limit cycle, y'all. Everybody knows.
Oh, yes,
yeah, that you forgot to hold for limit cycle, y'all.
Transonic gremlins, we still got to do that one too, I guess.
Yeah.
There's no better time to stock your reloading bench and light up your range with Hornady Get Loaded Plus. New this year, free bullets or free cases when you buy these select Hornady reloading tools. Plus, receive the free HIT Target Impact Indicator. Hornady Get Loaded Plus. Free bullets, free cases, free HIT Target Impact Indicator. Get loaded and light it up with Hornady Get Loaded Plus. Limitations apply. Visit Hornady.com/getloaded2025 for further details.
So a little sneak peek for the listener, for the viewer. You just mentioned transonic gremlins. Most folks don't know, but when your bullet starts to go into that transonic region, say Mach 1.1 or something like that, there's actually gremlins that come out of the wind and then they attack your bullet to cause it to go unstable, back end over tea kettle.
Yep. There's a movie about it in the 1980s. If you look at the uncut scenes, it actually shows it with the bullet.
Obviously, we're being super facetious here, but we do plan on doing an episode on transonic and that whole area of bullet flight, because that is one of the most misunderstood. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard, even in present day, when we know a lot more than we used to, that, oh, that bullet has to be going supersonic, or there's no way it'll ever hit the target because it's tumbling.
Right.
I've heard that so many times, it's not even funny. I don't even try to address it.
Right.
But we will address it in podcast form.
Yeah, and the goal there is going to be to explain, well, why do people have that view at all? Because
it's hard to hit your target. If you're running a BC-based calculator, like a lot of people are, like we used to do, it's really hard to hit a target after your bullet's gone subsonic.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that it's
on the first shot anyway.
Subsonic, it's a correlation that you pull into causation maybe. But we'll explain.
Yeah, we'll explain that. But on your
in
first
6
shot,
months, whenever I get time to come back on the show.
Well, we appreciate you carving out time for this because, like you mentioned, you've been away doing great work out there on the East Coast. You're back here for a half a day, and we pull you out of the lab to come up here for a show, and you've got obviously 1,000 emails to go through on top of all of the work that you haven't been doing when you've been gone. So hate to bring that up, but we love you. Our listeners love you. And listener, if you guys have topics that you want unpacked by the Jayden Quinlan, you just got to let us know. We've got a literal whiteboard full of them.
Boy.
Have you been to Preston's office in a minute?
No.
We've got the whiteboard is full of a huge chunk of just QC episodes.
Oh, boy.
Yep.
You guys are going to get to the point where I start saying stupid stuff and don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, I hope we get there because at this rate, it'll be decades.
I don't know about that.
But we do have a big list of stuff we want to record. Transonic Gremlins is one of them. Hopefully we get some listener suggestions as well because, again, I feel like they benefit the most. You know, when I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that we talk to all these people in the airport, at matches, in the grocery store, Sportsman's Warehouse, like, you know, people that see me, you, Preston, Judd, etc. They see guys that are on the show. They let us know about it. They love these technical deep dives, and they come to. I feel like they've came to use this Hornady podcast as a resource, as an educational resource, and as good of a job as we try to do with it, it really is dependent on having very technical people, very smart people that can talk us through this technical stuff. And so we do appreciate it. I feel like at the PRS match specifically there in Utah at the Hornady PRC, man, everybody that I talk to about the show and you ask them what's your favorite episodes, man, I love when Joe, Miles, and Jayden are on. They like Preston too, but as it turns out, they like you more.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I'm not really much of a public figure. I mean, at heart, I'm still just a farm kid from the middle of nowhere, and so if I can,
aren't we all?
If I can stay out of that, I prefer to. But if it helps people, I'm definitely willing to. You know? So that's cool to hear that people are still enjoying it. You know.
Yeah. Well, here's one for you that'll fill your bucket. I was, like you said, I was last shooter, first shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hustling over to the next stage. So I get up to the next stage, and there's some people in front of me is kind of downhill shooting, and I'm going to call it the super squad.
Okay.
All right, the winner was in that squad.
Yeah.
The winner of a couple divisions were in that squad. There was open winner, tactical, LE, sportsman, another podium finisher. I mean, it was a super squad. So I get up there, and I'm kind of looking for the targets, and you got amplified hearing protection on. So a guy that doesn't shoot our product, that may or may not listen to our podcast, I'm not sure, has no affiliation to us. Somebody had asked him a question, and his response, first words out of his mouth were, "Have you tried shooting large sample size zeros?"
All right.
And I went, oh my God. I smacked Joe Thielen, who won Tactical Division, was in that squad. I smacked him, said, "Did you hear that?" Like, we're making headway.
That's really cool.
You know, there was this big uproar initially, like, we're just trying to get people to shoot more bullets and sell more products, whatever. And then to hear an elite level competitor didn't answer the question. The first thing he said was, "Have you tried large sample size zeros?" I was like, oh my gosh, we've made it to the big
cool.
time.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And again, having no affiliation to Hornady or our products, but obviously we're getting through, and you know, it's not just us. You know, we kind of live in an echo chamber, but so I'm sure it's not just Hornady.
Oh no.
But I feel like we are one of the first ones to like, hey, this isn't rocket surgery. This isn't like graduate level math. This is pretty entry level statistics, and we're just, you know, we've got a hole punch or like, how do we make this more relevant and significant? And larger sample sizes did it, and we've seen that trend growing and growing and growing, and it was really rewarding for me to hear that.
Yeah, that is really cool.
And thank you for that episode and the future Quinlan's Corners that we've got. So I've got nothing more for you. Do you have anything more on the earth-based effects, Coriolis?
Well, not necessarily on this, but I guess I have a question maybe for the listener of, you know, a lot of these technical episodes focus around, you know, long distance shooting, because that does a good job of exposing a lot of these additional things that we can learn and talk about or whatever. But is there subjects in the realm of pistol or anything like these other disciplines that there's millions of people that are, you know, the long range shooting community is some percentage subset of all the shooters that are out there.
Right.
It's one of the most complex and demanding, you know, knowledge-wise stuff to be successful maybe, but, you know, there's cool stuff in other areas of ballistics too that maybe if folks throw some ideas out to you guys, you know, I know folks are always writing in and
we encourage
commenting or whatever. But that might be fun too, some stuff that...
Shotgun, pistol, SBR, subsonic.
Yeah.
All kinds of cool stuff to talk about. And that's a good point. You know, we, again, being in the echo chamber, everyone in this room loves precision shooting, precision rifles, long-range stuff. And we do get sometimes kind of caught up in that. If you go to a huge PRS match, I mean a huge match, like the Hornady PRC, 200 shooters, full to the brim. You go to a USPSA match, you're going to double that number. There'd be 350, 450 shooters at that match. So from a participation standpoint, there are just more shooters in other venues. So that's a good point to bring up. And so listener, if you do have ballistic-based topic ideas that aren't maybe precision long rifle, let us know. That's a good idea.
Cool. But yeah, other than that, this was a fun one to go over. I hope it's helpful to people. Maybe it alleviates some concern about, you know, oh man, I need to account for everything because I don't really exactly know how it works or why it does that. But, alleviate some concern there, maybe gain a little more understanding and
more romanticism.
Yeah. We should have the Paris gun competition.
Right. Well, Jayden, with that, why don't you go back to the dungeon, get some more work done.
Nice, sir. Yeah.
And get back after it, and we'll go back to the office and get more podcasts up. So thanks for coming on the show. I know it's a labor, but we do appreciate it.
You bet. Anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning into this episode all about those earth-based effects, what is romantically referred to as Coriolis, but also includes that Eotvos effect that we talked about. Hopefully you found this educational. We appreciate you listening. We'll catch you on the next one.